Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 8:30, so we'll be getting the meeting this morning. Welcome to the meeting of Cabinet on the 18th of July 2024. I'll take apologies for absence first, please.
From Councillor Alison Anthony, Leader.
Okay, are there any others? No. Okay, we'll move on to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, item 7, I'm named in the report prejudicial interest, and I will be leaving the room for the discussion of that item.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hopkins? You're on mute, Councillor Hopkins.
Sorry, Leader. Yeah, still an interest. Item 7, my wife is named in the report, so I'll declare personal prejudicial and leave the room.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others? No. Okay, we'll move on then to the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 4. I've not been advised of any amendments, but happy to take them if there are any. If not, are we all happy to agree them as a true record? Okay, thank you very much. Announcements, the Leader of the Council. I have no formal announcements on this part of the agenda today. On to public question time. Do we have any members of the public present? I don't see any. And we've not received any written questions. So we'll move on to councillor question time. Are there any councillors present who would like to indicate they'd like to ask questions? Councillor Holly?
Thank you very much, Leader. Questions, a couple of questions. The first one is on the item 12 on the agenda, the road safety issue. This is a substantial report, and I have to say that given the amount of information that's in there and given the detail, it's a bit short on detail. But one of the things about bus priorities and also about the cycleways through Carmarthen Road, the bus priority in High Street, the Davati lights, and also down through Carmarthen Road. I was wondering, an explanation today would be fine, but I think for the sake of elected members that there should be some sort of seminar on this report. It is a substantial report. It's going to make a major change throughout the city, and I was wondering if the cabinet member would be willing to actually do some form of some sort of confidential, or not so much confidential, but more of a members briefing on this. Thank you, Leader. I have other questions, but I will, if I can have an answer to that first.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Holly. I mean, obviously this is a joint report in 2 cabinet members, and there are multiple elements to it, as you say. This follows, though, receipt or confirmation of grants that we've had from Welsh Government as part of existing strategies. So, again, I think given the multiple elements, perhaps if you were able to write to the cabinet member to ask for a seminar on specific bits, perhaps, that you're most interested in, whether it's the EV network, whether it's the metro, whether it's the charging infrastructure, whether it's something else. Because again, these are, whilst they're all together in one report, they're not all sit with the same cabinet member. They're not all about the same infrastructure bits. So in principle, not a problem with following up with a further meeting on an element that's got a lot of interest in it. But again, I think if you can be a bit more specific, I'm sure the cabinet member can consider that.
I totally agree. I can't do that. That's not a problem, Leader. But what I'm saying is, it is a substantial report covering the whole of the city and numerous other wards, and it has got implications that go on for years. So what I will write to you and to the cabinet members with regards to the report and ask for some breakdowns and members briefing on the various elements of it. That's not a problem. I will do that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holly.
The second question.
Yes,
yeah,
sorry,
I've
thanks.
got a couple of other questions. The item 13, the capital programme authorised commitment funding, support development of the. Obviously, everybody welcomes us. Let's be blunt about this. It's it's a policy of the Welsh Government about free school meals. It should be welcomed by everyone. The one thing I would ask is, are all schools going to be able to accommodate this, or are we going to go back to the days where we have central kitchens and delivering food to the various schools?
I'll bring in Councillor Smith to give you the answer.
Well, the answer is that we're committed to ensuring this across all primary schools in Swansea. However, there will be a need for some temporary arrangements to enable us to deliver this service to the children. I think that's obviously got to be the key priority. It's providing the meals for the children. The team have worked miracles in what they've already been able to deliver, and that's the commitment to ensure that this is delivered to children, and that whatever arrangements that are necessary will be made while we're upgrading the facilities.
I think just to add to that, I think we've got at least one site where we've got some site constraints and some planning considerations that we're working through planning officers, education officers at the moment. But the vast majority of the estate, as Councillor Smith has said, is the intention is to do that directly on site.
And,
Okay,
and
thank you,
obviously,
Liam.
and obviously that's one of the issues that's being addressed in the report that's in front of us this morning. Yeah.
Okay. Another question is on item 14, the new model for specialist teaching facilities. Obviously, this is a major concern to quite a lot of us. I chair of the Governors of Burleigh, which is named in the report, so I suppose I do have an interest in that respect. But what I'm concerned about is that I know there's some information has gone out to the various governing bodies, but can I ask again, once again, that the broader spectrum of members on the council are informed of what's happening? Because I know spoke to members at council last week, and many people weren't aware that this particular report was being put forward, and there would be a substantial change in the special teaching facilities. So I would ask if we can, at some stage, look again at informing members of what's happening.
Just before I bring Councillor Smith in, Councillor Holly, I think the key thing to note about this report, it is a report to commence the consultation to do exactly what you're asking.
Exactly.
It's not a decision report in that respect. It's a report about beginning the process. So absolutely, that's the intent of the report, is to do what you're asking.
Yeah, and that's why I'm asking the question that members be kept in the loop on this one.
Yeah, happy to do that, Leader.
Okay, were there any further questions, Councillor Holly?
Well, the one on the draft waste strategy, as you know, you came to the scrutiny board meeting last Tuesday, and we had a discussion about that. I think there's a further discussion going to be had in scrutiny about it, so I have no questions on that. But I do have questions in the confidential area, but I'll wait for that to come along. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, I'll bring you back in at that point. Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll move then to item 7. I'll allow the 2 members to leave the meeting before we commence. Okay, then in Councillor Smith's absence, the report, agenda item 7, which is on page 5 of your agenda, you'll see there in section 1.1 the nominations for appointments to a number of schools. Again, as is the case, we congratulate and thank those that have come forward to serve as governors. I've got nothing further really to add to the content of the report other than to ask you to approve the recommendation on page 5. I'm happy to move. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's agreed. If we could bring Councillor Hopkins back in and Councillor Smith. Okay, we'll move on then to item 8, which is the capital outturn and financing for 23-24. Bring our section 1.5 officer and director of finance in now, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Leader. I can be very brief on this in terms of my technical advice. The report is relatively straightforward. It's in normal fashion as to what you would expect. There is a significant degree of slippage in the capital programme of just under £40 million, as set out in the recommendation. That is not unusual compared to normal position in terms of past years. It is slightly better performance overall. The advice, therefore, in the rest of the report sets out how and what was spent and why, with explanations for the variances in the appendices. You will see it's a relatively small number of explanations on a relatively small number of schemes that drive that. And equally, it's a relatively small number of large schemes when you see the appendix of all the big schemes. One thing to note, because it will seg into the next item, is that degree of slippage, which is then rolled over. We have a large capital programme with heavy capital financing where I'd already secured the borrowing. That 40 million quid alone at year end, with current elevated interest rates, would make you over £2 million in investment income alone. And given that the capital programme is end loaded, you could double or treble that, and that'll be part of the rationale for what you see in the revenue outcome report as to why the capital financing position is so good. But it is normal routine procedure for you to receive a report from me and to seek your approval for the rollover of sums that were not spent, and to look at and contemplate on and comment, if appropriate, on the large schemes and the reasons and rationale for the variance set out in the report. I have no other technical advice I need to give you on this one, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Just to add to what you've said, as we've said previously, this is one of the largest capital programmes in Wales. It remains an extremely ambitious capital programme, much larger than the council has tried to attempt to deliver in previous years. The slippage, whilst disappointing in terms of the 40 million that's there, they're all known reasons, and most of them are outside of our control. So in terms of our delivery of the capital programme, again, I would be much more concerned if we were unable to deliver for reasons that we were unaware of and were inside our control. So from that respect, I think, again, this is a timing issue now. The schemes will progress. They will continue to deliver, but that slippage does have a curiosity in terms of providing a bit of headroom in the other report that we'll take in due course. But other than that, I thank the teams for their delivery across the portfolios in terms of our various elements of the capital programme. Again, we've managed to spend 132 million, or 132 million has been invested this year in council assets. So that is by far still a significant delivery of any council in Wales. Okay, I'm happy to move the report. The recommendation is there on page 11. Could I ask for a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Could I ask all of those in favour, please, and show? Thank you very much. That is carried. We'll move then to item 9, which is the revenue financial outturn 23-24. I'll come back to Mr. Smith first, please, for some technical run through.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, I will spend just a little bit more time on this one because there's quite a bit going on in this report. The one recommendation when it comes back to yourself is relatively simple and innocuous reading, isn't it? But it belies an awful lot of complexity behind it. Short-term complexity that is nothing other than undoubtedly good news and must be recognised as such. But you will see lots of emphasis in the report in terms of items in bold, where many of this is temporary, and there are clear difficulties for all councils and all public services in the current financial landscape. So I will just emphasise some of the matters in there, but do not misunderstand my glass half empty rhetoric as your treasurer. There is equally much to be positive in the short term, but myself and my corporate management team colleagues are of course concerned about some of the mid-term outlook and some of the difficult choices that lay ahead. But hey, those are problems I'd rather have with some money in the bank than not have money in the bank. So with that preamble over, I draw your attention to the table at the top of page 20, which emphasises that services appeared to underspend, and I emphasise appeared to underspend because this was a very unusual year for budget. You deployed very substantial amounts of your economic recovery fund, and you also set aside very substantial sums into essential inflation, because don't forget, this is the year that inflation peaked at 11% odd, a 40-year high, and so you prudently as a council set large sums aside to help directorates. Without that support ongoing, directorates would have probably overspent, particularly in social services, and schools have also overspent. But on the basis of the adjusted budget, recognising all the decisions you took in year, technically they underspent. Didn't need to spend all of the contingency because, again, provided for a sizable contingency sum. Did not use all of the central inflation provision because we set aside a very, very substantial sum at the beginning of the year. Yes, there were some one-off costs in terms of departure costs. Collection fund did really, really well, delivered a 2 percentage point uptick. That should not come as a surprise because council took my advice and increased the collection rate for future years by that 2%. It had kind of been anticipated. So it won't repeat in terms of its one-off bonus, as it were, because it's been built into the base budget, but it does confirm it was the right decision taken by council in terms of setting council tax. That can be viewed a different way in terms of the overall position, which is you spent less of your reserves than you originally set out planned to do. You as a council chose heavily to deploy a large number of reserves for a number of logical reasons. And I'd still rather you make decisions to deploy them than be surprised at deploying them. But for the avoidance of doubt, you undoubtedly spent a lot less than you planned to do. They can be rolled over and you can use them again in the current year, albeit on a one-off basis, but it's still a nice problem to have. An alternative way of looking at it is the second part of the table, which is you added, if you accept my advice in this report, to general reserves. That'll be the first time in 7 years. You'll have added 20% to your general reserves. Yes, general reserves are proportionately low, but that's because specific reserves are very, very high. And I am happy with that, but I think it is prudent to top up the general reserves, having not been able to do for the last 7 years. The biggie in there is the very, very substantial, much lower draw from earmarked reserves. Instead of drawing the £35 million you planned, it was 7. It was £28 million less, and there is much to be positive about in that. And when I come on to the capital financing side of it, you will see, in line with the advice I've given to council and it's adopted it, all underspends on capital financing are washed through to the capital equalisation reserve, which contribute another near £17 million. A lot of the report is in bold, emphasising, yeah, there's lots to be good, hurrah, hurrah, but look at what's coming. And I must advise you to weigh that in any decisions you take going forward. But I wanted to draw your attention to that. The directorate reports set out their individual positions as to unders and overs and reasons why. The Director of Social Services particularly draws attention to the need to deploy his own service-specific reserves to aid his position. So the headline position is distorted, and we acknowledge that, and that without that support within the service, they would have otherwise significantly overspent rather than modestly overspent. The rest of the services are significantly under for, as I say, reasons including the deployment of heavy use of the Economic Recovery Fund, central inflation and service-specific reserves. I've already referenced that contingency fund was not fully deployed. Section 4 didn't need to deploy all of the inflation provision. That's why we take a prudent approach to setting sensible sums aside. They were exceptional. Inflation has dropped down significantly, and indeed the budget that council set for 24-25 had a much lower central inflation provision. That is part of the rationale for holding some sums centrally to provide you and officers within year wiggle room. Section 5 sets out schools expenditure, and again, schools are an oddity in the sense that they hold their own reserves and their own spend, and if they overspend, they draw from their reserves before they've even hit our consolidated revenue account position. Schools spent £3 million more than they got, so their reserves went from 20 to 17 million. You recognise that they were under pressure, and it's one of the reasons council put an £11 million emergency one-off package into supporting them for 24-25. So there is a draw from reserves. There is likely to continue to be a draw from reserves, and that is why you're hearing in every authority in the land pressures in schools and social services in particular. This should not come as a surprise. But I am equally confident in absolute terms, recognising that we are a large authority. I'm absolutely confident our schools collectively will have the largest reserves in Wales when that position is announced in October by the Welsh Government. We might not be the highest per capita, and it doesn't help for individual schools who may already be in a deficit position. But again, that's a nice position to be in compared to, I suspect, 21 other authorities in Wales when the facts and figures emerge as other authorities declare their position over the next few months. So there is a draw, but it's from a very elevated position. So I wanted to draw your attention to that. I set out in section 6 my 1,001 things that could go wrong at any point in time if nothing nice turns up. That is a necessary trait of a treasurer, hence my reference at the beginning to glass half full, the glass half empty. There are risks, undoubtedly. You know what they are. Every resident in every council, every councillor in every council knows them. There are no surprises in there particularly. The savings tracker for the year was reinstated and perfectly acceptable performance was achieved in terms of what are challenging and stretched targets when you set the savings position. And then I draw together the overall position and in the section 8 summaries, reasons for unders and overs and a raft of service carry forward requests, which I'm pleased to advise can be funded in full on the outturn position because of the technical underspend by directorates. And then I draw your attention to 8.6, which is where the really complicated, important bit sits. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to my Treasury management team. It's a small team, but they have worked their socks off. And any treasurer who rocks up and says they underspent on their capital financing in year by 70% or £17 million is going to be a very happy treasurer. Elevated interest rates, when you borrow at 1 point something, you haven't spent all the money and you put it back out at 5 point something, is going to make you a very sizable sum of money, even a bigger sum than I could have ever dreamt in the year. We've had a couple of years of £9 million worth of underspending on there, 17 million, all gets added into the capital equalisation reserve to bolster your financial position for difficulties that may well lie ahead. We did not need to use all of the in-year contingency sums, and we have a contingency budget. We budget in year for a sum, and we also normally carry a sum on the balance sheet. That's one-off savings built up over the years. For the avoidance of doubt, you started 23-24 with precisely naught in that, because it's been tough times. You ended the year with over £12 million in there, which is available for you to consider how to deploy on top of the in-year contingency for 24-25. So as I say, nice problems to have. £12 million when you previously had naught. You can only use it one-off, but it is at your disposal to help ameliorate pressures as they arise. The Economic Recovery Fund was its heavy lifting year. Most of that has been drawn down. There are still some residual bits to be worked through in terms of schemes timing, but I have kept a small sum back for the rest of the residual Economic Recovery Fund and transferred the rest to the contingency fund, which is why that's gone from naught to over £12 million. And as I've already referenced, my advice is that you add £2 million to the General Reserve, being the first time in 7 years that you have topped that up. The overall report is summarised in Appendix A in terms of the pluses and minuses and to's and fro's. And as I say, I will start with I'll end with what I started with, which is this is nothing but clearly good news for outturn position, which is what this report is and the advice I'm giving you. There are pressures to come, but it gives you an awful lot of levers short term, notwithstanding there will be difficult choices ahead. So I'll stop at that point in terms of the technical advice. Apologies for the long explanation, but I think this was the one it was worth spending some time on and recognising the very large sums of money that have been added to your disposal for addressing some of the pressures that are undoubtedly going to be faced by this council and all councils. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And firstly, can I also place on record our thanks to you and your Treasury team for the work that's been done to get the reports before us today and for the position that has been achieved at outturn. It continues to be a very challenging situation. I know your team are working extremely hard, as are you, to make sure that we stay on top of this and that we eke out every pound that we can for service delivery in Swansea. As you say, we have substantial earmarked reserves and our intention was to use them. And again, that is not something that we should be critical or concerned about because we set those large reserves up in order to fund the things that we needed to do. So spending those reserves over the coming years will be normal practice because that is why they were set up. We've also taken note of what the auditors have asked us to do, which is to increase the general reserves somewhat by a couple of £1 billion, as you said, because we were very low in terms of our general reserves and they would only provide for a couple of days of running of the council. So we've taken the opportunity to do that. And as you've said, through the prudent management of the budget, we also find ourselves having some further monies at our disposal that we did not anticipate. So with that in mind, Mr. Smith, my intention following discussions with cabinet members and directors is to make some announcements this morning in terms of our intentions about how we may deploy some of those sums as soon as is practicable. Some immediately, some, I assume, subject to further reports. So firstly, having discussed with Councillor Gibbard and Mr Howes in social services, clearly there remains some significant pressures within social care. That is something we are seeing across Wales. Swansea is not immune to that. And therefore, the suggestion would be that we bring forward an additional provision of £6 million for social services to help the services there invest in the care that our residents need to make sure that we provide money to deal with some of the pressures. By no means does that mean that we therefore have fixed everything, but it does mean that we have some headroom within social services for further investment and support of our residents. On top of that, Councillor Alison Anthony, who's not able to be with us today, has been working on a number of schemes to support families through the summer holidays. We know that we have an extended school holidays for many families. That is an incredibly difficult time in terms of financial burden, where children would otherwise receive free school meals in their school time. They don't get that support during the summer holidays. In Swansea, we've taken action to try and address that. And again, Councillor Anthony has been working with officers to take forward and draw up a scheme for holiday food support this summer again. So proposal would be for an immediate allocation of £150,000 to support our most vulnerable children during the summer holidays so that they get school meals. We have as well, as Cabinet will know, been running free bus services for a number of years now. They are very popular, and again, they are part of our strategy to support families who would be not able to travel. We know that travel in Swansea is primarily a private affair. It's run by a number of private companies. We remain very, very keen to take on a franchise for bus services once the bus bill has made its way through Welsh Government. But in the meantime, we will continue to look at innovative ways to support families to travel across Swansea and to enjoy the facilities that we have. We made an announcement in the budget of some £400,000 to do that, but that again would probably not have met all of the demand that we would see during the summer months, and therefore to give us confidence that we can replicate what we've done in previous years, the suggestion is that we allocate immediately a further £200,000 into the free bus travel scheme. And again, Councillor Stevens and the highways officers have been looking at how we can make sure that that scheme is ready to go for the summer holidays. In addition, we announced £1 million at budget for investment in community priorities. This allows councillors to talk to their communities, look at schemes that their communities would want to see. These are bigger schemes outside of the already existing community budgets that councillors can deploy. That was set at £1 million. Such is the demand that we are seeing. Again, the proposal would be that we seek to double the size of that fund to £2 million so that more communities can see the investment that they would like and the priorities that they would like delivered in their communities. And again, grateful to Councillor Stevens and other cabinet members involved in that delivery of those schemes. So hopefully we'll see those rolling out over the coming months. Potholes and road resurfacing. We've made an allocation, a sizable allocation in the budget, but of course we did so at the time highlighting the fact that we have had very little additional capital from the previous UK government, which limited Welsh Government's ability to provide capital to local government. I think our total increase was £66,000. We've made many millions available for road resurfacing. We continue with our pothole pledge. Councillor Stevens and the teams have been taking forward new patchworks dealing with areas of resurfacing in people's wards, in our communities. But again, the demands remain high. So therefore, our proposal is to add an additional 1 million to the already announced sums so that more patching, more resurfacing and more potholes can be repaired as quickly as possible. We have also been rolling out new play areas in every area of the community. It's the largest ever play investment in the city. Some £7 million will have been invested by the end of this year. That means every council park across Swansea has been upgraded. In addition to that, we've also increased the availability of accessible play equipment across our communities to make sure those residents or children with mobility issues can enjoy play in their parks. But it's been clear that given the very wet winters we're seeing, and sometimes the wet summers as well, sometimes the pathways to those new play areas are becoming difficult to navigate. So we'll be proposing to establish a new fund set initially at £200,000 so that we can increase the connectivity between the existing pathways and our new play areas to make it easier for people to get to those fantastic new play areas. Again, it'll be part of a rolling programme of investment in pathways and upgrades to our parks and play areas. We've also been very, very successful, I should say, and I should thank Councillor Francis Davis and Councillor Stevens again for the incredible work they've done with the teams to make sure those play areas are delivered. In terms of the active travel routes, we've been very successful in securing Welsh Government grant. I think we've taken, the largest proportion of any council in Wales in terms of grants for active travel routes. But those routes, given the wet weather, are seeing lots of growth from the foliage and trees and bushes that line them in many areas. So again, we're proposing to invest some 60,000 in some new specialised kit to deal with active travel route maintenance. These are pieces of kit that can get down those narrower pathways so that our officers can make sure that those areas are cut back on a regular basis. And I'm grateful to Councillor Anderson and his team for the work that they're doing to deal with overgrowth across the city. And again, this will now see a regular maintenance regime in place for our active travel routes. We also made the announcement at budget budget time to allocate £1 million for the delivery of a network of new skate parks across the city. We were supportive and supported the delivery of the skate park on the Mumble seafront, which has been hugely successful. Now, it's important that we try and replicate that success. We've been working for some time with some experts within the skate industry to look at new facilities, and we will shortly bring forward details of how that network could be delivered. But clearly, such is the demand and the opportunity to deliver not only high quality skate parks, but other facilities to provide bike play, as well as other facilities to supplement what we're already doing in our parks. The proposal today would be to add another £1 million, doubling the size of the skate park fund to £2 million. And I know Councillor Francis Davis will be bringing forward proposals shortly, which will highlight how that can be delivered. But we believe through the work that Councillor Francis Davis is doing to not only deliver that fund, but also to get some match funding in, that scheme could top some £2.6 million by the time it's finally delivered. So again, another significant investment. And then finally, our Christmas parade has grown year on year, and we have seen crowds of hundreds of thousands turning up to watch that parade now, which I think is the biggest in Wales. Again, part of that parade is the excellent Christmas lights that are provided in the city centre. And obviously, it's also replicated in other communities across Swansea. And again, to continue to ensure that families can enjoy one of the largest Christmas parades in Swansea, there will be an allocation of £50,000 towards Christmas lights and activities in the city centre this coming year. So again, with that, Mr. Smith, those are the proposals on how we will deploy some of the monies that you've taken us through this morning, and we'll welcome your comments on those.
Thank you, Leader. I'll give you some technical advice, but also some overarching advice. At its simplest level, This is an outturn report that says you've got over £12 million to spend as you see fit. Doing a quick tally up, the announcement is less than £12 million, so it is clearly affordable. There is a process to go through on some of these, though, and that includes due process for large schemes that are new policy announcements. So £1 million is above my environment limit. Some of them are capital, so they will require a process. And some of them, we need to be mindful of how we allow for appropriate scrutiny on proposals. But looking at them and breaking them down and taking them into sort of probably three broad areas. Your initial announcement of that additional £6 million for social care, effectively that's not a budget environment. That is going to be an indication that at first quarter, when it comes to September, you are not going to be tasking cabinet members and officers with trying to fully rebalance social care. That seems to me perfectly logical and sensible. You're not actually making a policy decision on that one. You're just giving a very useful, strong steer to officers and members. And therefore, we will take that forward in first quarter and recognise that effectively I will be advising that you deploy in-year contingency, which includes the brought forward £12 million to address that one. So I don't see any issue with that one. The three that are £1 million are predominantly capital and or above my environment limit, so they will require a due process in terms of FPR 7s and such like coming through to Cabinet in due course, and I am satisfied that that would allow for scrutiny, if scrutiny wished to review them, and for there to be considered debate and discussion before you make individual decisions on those, but I think those are in order. There's some of the rest of them are relatively small. They are broadly extensions of existing policy commitments. There are a couple that are new. The couple that are new are below £75,000, so they do not require under our constitution and financial procedure rules a new decision of cabinet. The other ones being policy extensions, the sum total of all of those is less than £1 million. And given I have environment approval for up to £1 million, and I have a clearly identified in-year contingency of £3 or £4 million and the roll forward £12 million, I would be proposing that you adopt normal convention, given that some of these are time sensitive. Otherwise, the summer will be over before we've even got to making the decision that those could proceed. They would be regularised in due course at first quarter. It is not unusual for me to advise Cabinet in year on a number of small contingency sums, and then you regularise them after the event, as it were, in the first quarter September report. So that's my advice in terms of how they could be done. So for the avoidance of doubt, as a whole, affordable because you've got a bigger pot than you thought. One, the social services one, straightforward. It's just a clear steer. Three, that will require a definitive decision in due course through an appropriate route. And the smaller ones, I would be advising, yes, that's reasonable for officers and members to crack on with and be regularised in September in line with normal business for smaller items where I've needed to give advice to deploy some of the contingency. So I'm satisfied with those, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And again, one thing I would have mentioned in that list, but it isn't a new announcement, which is why I've done it separately, is of course just to remind Cabinet and others that we had scrutiny on Tuesday, and we were very clear there that there is already additional investment going in to recruit more staff to deal with the irregularity in bin collections and waste collections, and a significant capital investment going in to acquire a new fleet of vehicles to help our teams make sure that they're able to collect the waste on the day that they need to, and the intention is to return to single day waste collections as soon as possible. So I know Councillor Anderson and the team are working, and we gave full answers on that investment that's going in and the activities around waste, which I know have been a matter of debate. So it's not that those aren't considered in this list, but they're already in progress and they are already being done. So with that, thank you, Mr. Smith, for your advice. I'll pause there if any Cabinet members want to comment or want to say anything. Councillor Francis Davis.
Yeah, just welcome the investment in skate parks and pump tracks, etc. I know this will be welcome throughout the city. TURF, we took on as consultants to look at this, and this will enable now to have a fully comprehensive access to skating and pump tracks and wheel sports throughout the city and county Swansea. So like we led the way in play areas, I think now we lead the way in Wales on these wheel sports. So thank you very much.
No problem. Councillor Gwilliam.
Thank you, Leader. Just in Councillor Anthony's absence, I know that she would like to thank you for particularly the holiday hunger, and I know that the bus service and our course funding as well means that families get to have a fun and free day out. I know a lot of families really worry about the summer period, so this takes the pressure off. And also I know that she'd like to thank officers who work incredibly hard to get those grants out very quickly, so that our organisations within areas across Swansea can distribute what they need to quite quickly. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor William. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And yeah, certainly the highways investment and the community's investment, particularly music to my ears. I mean, the additional funding for our highways network is needed, and it will be put to real good use in responding to concerns and things that we get from residents, and particularly around this small resurfacing scheme, and the additional capital investment into our communities is certainly most welcome. And I've had the pleasure of working alongside Councillor Francis Davis on a number of these issues over the years. And I mean, I've said it before in terms of the community budget. I think the community budget is an excellent budget of funds that puts funding into direct community control via their local ward members, and the capital schemes pot is certainly going to build on that and allow these wards to get larger schemes off the ground that the communities really want. So yeah, I appreciate that. We support the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I'd echo what Councillor Gwilym said in terms of the holiday hunger support. We know that is something that is a huge issue in our communities, and I'm glad to see this investment being put forward. Going back to Mr. Smith's report, I think in terms of the education and the school's budget, I think we have to recognise the additional £11 million which we as a council made available to schools this year. In addition, that was additional money, £11 million. However, I think, as Mr. Smith said, is the glass half full or half empty? When you look at the demands on schools, they're clearly exceeding resources, and that's not an issue in Swansea. That's an issue across the whole of Wales. In fact, it's an issue across the whole of the UK. And I think there are matters there that both national governments need to recognise and address as a matter of urgency. But I think locally, as I said, we can look to the investment we've made.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Smith. And as we noted at the time, I think you'd be struggling to find anywhere in Wales that invested more in its education this year. When we take together the commitment as well on pensions that we've made, which we hope will flow through shortly, we are up there at the top of the table in terms of investment in schools. And of course, we hope that the new Labour government can move forward quickly with its commitment on the extra teachers for England, which will also then have a direct consequential for Wales, and obviously talk to the Welsh Government about making sure that flows through into local authorities as quickly as possible to help our schools with their budgetary pressures. Councillor Gibbard, apologies.
Thank you. Yeah, just to sort of echo others' comments, very grateful for the extra investment in social services. This is going to particularly help ease some of the challenges that we face in adult services specifically. But I think, as we've discussed numerous times, it is very difficult at the moment. The complexity and the demand that we're facing in child and family, and particularly in adult services, is unprecedented. And as Councillor Smith just said, this is not just a situation in Swansea. This is Wales. This is UK wide. So this investment will go some way to ease those pressures in the immediate time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gibbard. Absolutely agree. And again, thank you for the work that you and Dave Howes and the team are doing to manage the pressures in social services. Councillor Anderson, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Leader. I too welcome the extra finances in for the renewal of our RCVs, and also the extra 60,000, which will allow us to get a specialised equipment to come in for the active travel routes. It's going to really help the department out on that extra funding. Thank you, Leader.
Well, thank you, Councillor Anderson. Okay, so if there aren't any other comments, we've heard Mr. Smith's advice to the suggested investment. As was made clear, some can be done immediately, others will require further reports, and those will go through the formal process. With that then, I will move the the recommendation on page 10. There aren't amendments to the report. As Mr. Smith said, these are intentions to invest and they will go through the various routes, so there's no need for an amendment to the actual report, but you will have all noted how we intend to deploy the sums allocated in the report. So I'll happily move. Could I ask for a second, please?
Happy to second.
Okay, could I ask you all if you could show your approval? Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, we'll move then on to item 10, which is another revenue outturn report on the housing revenue account. I'll come to Mr. Smith first.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to know this one's back to being a brief technical advice report, but what you've heard on the two previous ones around capital and general fund is rinse repeat here for the housing revenue account. The HRA anticipated drawing from its reserves largely to help support its overall capital programme, a combination of slippage on the HRA capital programme, but also some deliberate and targeted strategic interventions by the Director of Place and his staff in discussion with myself and in conjunction with the relevant cabinet member, who I'm sure will speak in a moment. We did take a deliberate decision to reverse the position and add to the HRA reserves to bolster for the significant number of risks that are listed in the report. It does mean that reserves go up. They would anticipate to be drawn back down to help support the slippage in the capital programme, but there is also some method in my madness in terms of advice of looking to maximise how much could be held back in HRA reserves to cover some of those additional risks that are set out in the report, a matter that affects all 11 of the 22 local authorities that have got a housing revenue account. But that is the reason for the slightly bigger than normal swing, but otherwise the position is as you would expect for an HRA outturn report. But I will defer to the relevant cabinet member who may wish to add further to my technical advice. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. And as you say, I think it's a sensible position to take, but we do anticipate those risks reducing in the short term, which will allow us then to revert the position, but absolutely sensible way to proceed in the meantime. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Mr. Smith. Just to expand on Mr. Smith's reference to planned interventions and planned overspends. So I would describe them as investments and additional investments. So we've increased the day-to-day maintenance and repairs budget intentionally. Not only have we seen inflationary increases in building costs, but also we're still dealing with a significant backlog, and we're actually seeing a surge in demand for day-to-day repairs as well, which has caused a planned overspend. We're also investing in our void properties. So we've taken on several companies to increase the work to turn the voids around so that we can bring them back into use far quicker. And that is in response to a rise that we've seen in housing demand. And again, we've got planned spends in terms of gas servicing and electrical testing. And we've carried out far more of those than we would in a normal year. In addition to that, we have, as Mr. Smith referenced, we've got some slippage in the capital programme, around circa 11 million. We do intend, though, this next financial year, we've got some significant projects coming online, and I will reference the investment at the top of High Street with Croft Street, which will be in the tens of millions. So we do have some very significant spends in the next year. You will see at Table A in Appendix A, the total planned expenditure was around 80.9 million. We've actually spent 73.2 million. So again, a significant investment in our council housing, and also in terms of buying back ex-council right to buy. So some acquisitions, money has been invested in that as well. And then just to reference that Table B, the movement in reserves that Mr. Smith referenced. So we now have over 16 million in reserves currently, but that will be used and dipped into as our capital programme rolls out in the next year. to deal with the slippage. So very happy to move the recommendation at page 38. And it's recommended that the comments and variations in this report be noted and that the proposed reserve transfers of 5.89 million detailed in section 2.1 are approved.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis, and again, thank you and your team for the work that they've been doing to ensure we continue to invest in our council houses and support our tenants. Taking the 70 odd million that you mentioned there together with 130 million, that's 200 million invested in terms of homes and infrastructure, assets, schools and other facilities across Swansea. So again, a significant investment despite a little bit of slippage around the edges. But I know you'll be coming forward with shortly with further announcements on investment, and we look forward to those. So with that, I'm happy to second those recommendations. Could I ask you all if you're in favour of the report, please? Thank you very much. That is carried. We move on to item 11 now, which is the Guildhall illumination policy. Councillor King.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, so it's become a well-established a thing now of us lighting the facade of the Guildhall to recognise various causes or issues or particular days during the year, and there's quite a well-established calendar now that facilitates that. But what the aim of this policy is to set out a procedure really whereby groups or individuals, represented groups, can make a request to the council for the Guildhall to be lit for a specific issue or a specific day or some kind of cause, and outlines how we will consider those requests and a framework for doing that. And that's really what the policy is aiming to achieve. Alongside that, you'll see that the report makes reference to a subgroup, and so I'll be convening a subgroup from the Strategic Qualities Board who will meet to consider the applications and then make a recommendation. And the report also seeks delegated authority to the Cabinet member to then make a decision in line with the policy and that recommendation. And there's also provision in recommendation 3 there that where there are urgent requests arising, that the Cabinet member may make a decision to authorise an officer to act on their behalf, to recognise things that might suddenly happen. For example, when the Ukraine war happened, we made a decision to light the Guildhall in response to that. So I'm very, very pleased to bring the policy, very grateful to the work that officers have put into producing this and to make this work. I'm very happy to move the report.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor King. Very grateful for the work that you've been doing with your officers on this. I think it, as you say, it's become a somewhat of a regular tradition now that we use the Guildhall and illuminate it, and obviously that follows the investment we made in the lighting infrastructure around the Guildhall some years ago, which allows us to do it. I'm happy to second the report, but does anybody else wish to come in on this item? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other comments? No. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please, you could show. Thank you very much. That is carried. On then to item 12, which is Financial Procedure Rule 7, Capital Projects, Traffic Management, ULEVTF, Road Safety, Capital and Revenue Grants 24-25, snappy title. Okay, who's taking this item first, please, sir? Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, you're right. Very snappy title, but it does cover a wide variety of things. Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm certainly pleased to present the report alongside Councillor Lewis on the significant funding we've received from the Welsh Government, totaling over £7 million of support to support a variety of sustainable transport schemes across Swansea. As said, it is in fact a very comprehensive report covering many different areas, but this funding will really enable us to advance several key projects under the Local Transport and Active Travel Funds, Road Safety Grant and EV Transformation Fund. So on the Local Transport Fund, that we've got the Swansea Bay and West Wales Metro project, we've been awarded £2 million to further develop this integrated transport network, which includes rail, bus and active travel options, with the project aiming to create a modern and sustainable transport system for our region. So the funding will also help support the continued expansion of bus priority improvements and the rollout of real-time passenger information systems. We've also, as part of the report, there's also the Swansea Valley Bus Pilot Scheme, which is an investment of almost £500,000. This project will enhance passenger transport hubs at some key locations and trial bus provision improvements along our key transport corridors. There's sustainable transport improvements where we've been awarded £350,000 to advance several projects, including public transport interchanges at Gowerton and Pontydylais, alternative park and ride options, and a secure cycle parking hub in the city centre, which is something that has come up numerous times in the past that we are lacking. On the Active Travel Fund, we've been awarded over £2.5 million to develop and expand the ever-growing network of walking and cycling routes, which is currently sitting at over 120 kilometres. Part of the active travel bid will be the Walters Road, which will allow us to develop the first phase of the pedestrian cycle routes from Page Street to Brynamore Road. This is a key strategic corridor, and although I do accept that there will be some disruption, we do intend to work with residents, businesses, and members on each phase to ensure they're updated on the progress. In fact, there's already been some changes to the plans following the initial engagement sessions. Further to this, there's partial funding has been awarded to advance proposals for safe walking and cycling infrastructure from Loughor to Gowerton, and we've also been granted over £1 million for the development and minor works of future active travel schemes right across Swansea. As part of the report also covers the road safety grant now, so which is over 200,000 has been allocated to address road safety concerns across the county, as well as a further 100,000 to continue the education programs such as Curbcraft, pupil cycle training and bike safe training programs for motorcyclists. So I think I've covered pretty much everything in the report, Leader. So the initiatives highlighted are certainly pivotal in our commitment to enhancing transport links, reducing congestion, improving safety and promoting sustainable travel options in Swansea. I just want to place on record my thanks to Matt Bowyer for pulling together a report, and our entire active travel team and road safety teams for the excellent work on putting together such comprehensive bids to Welsh Government, and for their outstanding engagements with residents, members and stakeholder groups as these initiatives progress over the year. So I think that's quite enough from me. Happy to move the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Yes, as you say, a huge amount in there, and again, also add my thanks to yourself and to your officers for the work that's been done there. I call Councillor Lewis in.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Stevens. Really welcome such significant investment, and the opportunity to expand on greener forms of transport is really welcomed. I'm sure that that will go some ways to improving air quality and well-being of people in Swansea, so really welcome that. I feel that the sum I'm introducing now is quite insignificant in comparison. However, it will actually go a long way, a small amount of money, which is an additional 505,000, which has been awarded from Welsh Government's Ultra-Low Emission Vehicle Transformation Fund. This will help further accelerate the work that we've done as a local authority in terms of providing a publicly accessible electric vehicle charging infrastructure across Swansea. The electric vehicle charging infrastructure will be phase 3. So we've delivered phases 1 and 2 already. And this will enable the delivery of 8 fast charge points on 4 sites, the establishment of a slow charging hub in Poe Square to provide slow overnight charging facilities for residents without off-street parking in the marina, and a 4-bay rapid charging hub in the Strand car park, which I hope could help stimulate taxi companies to think about going greener and going electric. So the Strand car park is an intentionally chosen site in the city centre for that very purpose, but will also be accessible to the public. The delivery of charge points at the sites are obviously subject to connection costs. So if we do find that sites may be unviable because of the significant connection costs, then we will replace those sites with other alternative sites. A summary map detailing the locations of these sites can be seen in Appendix L, and the delivery of the programme will add to the existing charge points by Swansea Council, with a combined total of public electric vehicle charge points installed at 44 sites, with 133 charge points across the city and county. This will complement the commercial offering, which is delivered not by the council but by other companies. We hope that that network will continue to expand. So very happy to second the report.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lewis. And again, thank you for the work that you and your team have been doing on EV and the whole move away from diesel and petrol vehicles. That includes the work on hydrogen as well, which obviously we're exploring. But yeah, I mean, look, as a electric car owner myself, I think it's welcome to see the growing networks, not just from councils, but from the private sector. And clearly, you know, if we're going to encourage more people to move away from petrol and diesel vehicles, having the ability to charge or refuel your vehicle with a different form of energy is going to be really important if we're going to make the switch and meet our net zero targets. So absolutely. So with that, you've had the report moved and seconded. Are there any further comments or questions from anybody? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please. Okay, that is carried. On to item 13 then, which is the capital programme authorisation for the commitment of funding to support the development and completion of the remaining works at schools to support the rollout of universal free school meals to all primary pupils. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Leader. Another snappy title, but I think what this it is a technical report dealing with the funding of the programme. But I think what lies behind this is the commitment and the delivery that's been achieved here in terms of improving the facilities for children right across Swansea's primary schools, indeed across the whole of Wales. What we found at the beginning of when we implementing this policy was that there was a need for investment in school kitchen facilities, and I think that is absolutely justified. You can't deliver the meals to the children unless you've got the facilities to do so. What I think is remarkable is that where we've got already in delivering this programme, out of 80 schools that are mentioned here in the report, 75 are either being completed or are anticipated to be completed within the matter of weeks. So that's 75 out of 80 schools, leaving a total of 5 schools which are named in the report where more investment, more complex schemes were required. This report will enable us to deliver those 5 schemes. I visited quite a few of those schools already, and I plan to have visited all 5 shortly. Or as soon as possible. And I think this is going to deliver this programme, and it's a much welcomed investment in the facilities for our youngest children in Swansea. So it gives me great pleasure to move the report. And can I also take this opportunity to thank the team that have been responsible for delivering this programme. It hasn't been an easy programme to deliver, but the level of detail and the level of commitment that they've shown in mastering those details and coming up with innovative schemes to overcome the challenges, I think is a tribute to them, and I have great pleasure in moving the report, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm very happy to second this, and as you say, it's hugely important in terms of the benefits that this will bring to children to make sure that they have proper meals when they go through their day at school. You would think, perhaps looking from afar, that is an easy thing to achieve. You just provide a meal to a child, but we know there's been a huge amount of challenging work had to be done on this, because sometimes it will mean reconfiguration of school buildings, sometimes it will mean new school buildings, it may mean new energy supplies being provided to those facilities to enable the kitchens to be properly upgraded. So it has been a hugely complex delivery and a challenge. But again, I would add my thanks to you and to your teams for the work that's been done here, and I think we're very close now to achieving the full delivery of this, so that every child can take the benefit of universal free school meals. But in the meantime, obviously, we're continuing with alternative provision whilst we make sure that we get the final elements of the delivery done. So again, welcome the report and thank you again for the work. Are there any comments or questions for Councillor Smith on this? Nope. Okay. Can I ask you then if you're all in agreement? Thank you very much. That is carried. We'll move then to item 14. Just grab my right page a second. Apologies. Which is the proposed new model for special teaching facilities across Swansea. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, me again, I'm afraid. Obviously, we've just touched on this earlier, and this is a proposal to go to consultation on the proposals that are outlined and summarised in the report. There is one amendment that it would be the first recommendation, expansion of 4 STFs, not expansion of 3 STFs. That and I think the appendices, I've got the correct figures in them. What this report would enable us to do is to consult on the proposals to make amendments and to develop where STFs, specialist teaching facilities, are located across the whole of Swansea. The plan is to make sure that they're available in localities where they're needed, that they meet the changing needs in terms of additional learning needs, that they support more effectively the transition from primary school to secondary, and that we're able to make provision for the increasing number of children that are being educated through the medium of Welsh. I think it is about reviewing our existing provision. It's about building on the strengths of the STFs across the whole of Swansea, and it's enabling us to respond more effectively both to where the demand lies and to how the demand is likely to develop in future. This, of course, needs to be seen within the context of the other investment that we're making in terms of meeting the needs of children with additional learning needs. The plan for the new special school is going to be a huge step forward for us in Swansea, and so will the changes to the STFs. So it gives me great pleasure to move the report, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and very happy to second. As you say, this is the start of a process where we consult on what we potentially could move to. And as you say, the school's estate and the needs and the aspirations have not remained static. They have changed, and we need therefore to make sure that our special teaching facilities remain at the best that we can deliver and provided in the best locations for the children who need them. And as you say, we'll shortly be considering the future phases of the delivery of the special school, which will add a significant amount in terms of capacity and capability for us here in Swansea. So very happy to support this, and again look forward to the consultation progressing on this. Any comments or questions for Councillor Smith? No, if I could ask you then if you're all in approval. Thank you very much. That is carried. On then to item 15, which is the draft waste strategy 25 to 30. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This report seeks approval for Cabinet to seek residents' views on Swansea's draft waste strategy for 25 to 2030 through a public consultation process. Just an introduction, any waste strategy must be aligned in the relevant current UK Welsh Government policies and legislative acts and Swansea's corporate plan for 2023 to 2028. The corporate plan clearly states its commitment to the environment through the corporate priority delivery on nature recovery and climate change, also recognises the importance and sustainable services to the transformation of financial resilience. The proposed strategy is attached at Appendix A and outlines Swansea's progression from 45% recycling in 2011-2012 to early attainment at 24-25 statutory 70% recycling targets. The strategy details our current service provisions and the action plan to improve financial resiliences and measures which would help achieve the likely future increase in the statutory recycling targets. This document also highlights a range of potential future challenges and options which may need to be considered to meet those challenges. These challenges include numerous upcoming changes to the UK legislation, which will also impact how waste services are financed. It is also proposed to undertake a public consultation on the key areas of the recommended draft strategy. A draft public consultation document is included in Appendix B. The consultation will run for 4 weeks and be made available on our website. Hard copies will be made available at key council locations such as libraries, contact centres and district housing offices. The consultation will be widely promoted externally. We will also promote within our existing groups such as Disability Network, Ageing Well forums and poverty forums, etc. Section 3 is the integrated assessment applications. I don't intend to go through that section, Leader. Section 4, the financial implications. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to consult, has no financial implications. Any potential future challenges and options which may need to be considered would have their financial implications assessed as part of that process. Legal implications. This strategy will ensure that we meet 70% statutory recycling targets set by Welsh Government for 24-25. It is expected that the Welsh Government will legislate further statutory recycling targets. I have nothing else to add on this, Leader, except that I would ask that the Cabinet approve the public consultation exercise to seek the views on Swansea's draft waste strategy. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson, and again, thank you for taking us through that in detail. I think important to recognise the efforts that have been made over a number of years now and how the population of Swansea, the residents of Swansea, are doing a huge amount already to recycle. You know, that we know that Wales leads is in the top 3 in the world for recycling, and Swansea is in the top 3 in Wales in terms of cities that recycle. So, you know, we are right up there at the very top in terms of what is being done. But as you say, we have to continue to improve. The report says we've gone from 40% recycling or 45% recycling in 2012 to now 70%. So, you know, that has been a huge move. We know that most households these days, or the majority of households, are already putting out less than 3 black bags. We know that to be the case. And we know that people want to recycle more if we give them the opportunity. So again, looking at all of these things will allow us hopefully to get to a new position on waste, which again the people of Swansea can support because they're doing an excellent job at the moment, and you know, we'll continue to support them on that. So thank you very much for that, and happy to second the recommendations on page 164. Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Anderson? Councillor Stevens, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just have a comment, Leader. I just wanted to thank Councillor Anderson for all the work he's doing on it, and yourself. But I just wanted to highlight a point that I feel is extremely important, that's highlighted in the report, and I know you have spearheaded this, Councillor Anderson, in terms of the move to the reusable containers and shift away from single-use sacks. In fact, it's not we can't get it lost in the report in the fact that it's 10 million single-use bags are going to be taken out of circulation in terms of our changes to reusable containers, and I think that is a very positive story in my eyes anyway. So thanks.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. It's a massive amount of single-use plastics being taken out of use if we move to those reusable containers. Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much for that. The report's been moved and seconded. Are you all happy to agree? Thank you very much. We move now then to agenda item 16, which is exclusion of the public. You have the legal officer's rationale laid out there for that move. Can I ask you all if you're in favour? Thank you very much. We'll pause there for a second just to pause the recording.